Hey, left, right, out. We're sitting here just enjoying the day. We've had really interesting days in the market. Um, I don't know where the levels are anymore. I was looking for 39 something in the S&P. We went there. I think we're now flat at roughly 4,000 level, which is a key. Any of those round number things are very key and psychologically. The Dow was down today, but you look at yesterday. Yesterday it kind of puked. Everything puked. And then today you had a couple of Fed presidents out there, or governors, whatever you want to call them, Fed governors. They were out there kind of, which I wouldn't say they were massaging the market, because one of them was talking about, hey, they're going to have a Volcker moment. One that told me, one, they're not going to fight very aggressively. Two, he also said they're not going to let it get out of control. So pretty much contradictory terms, or contradictory statements there. And either one, I know the market kind of rallied on some of those statements, but either one of those is precarious for the market itself, or just economically. One, if he says he's going to fight inflation, but they're not willing to raise rates, then they're essentially not going to fight inflation. But here's what I don't even care about that. Let's just get to the nitty gritty. The damage isn't done yet. We haven't even started. This rodeo has not even started. We haven't got to the QT. We haven't got to another rate hike. Like I said, 1.25 is pretty much my call, and this thing starts really getting interesting. But they haven't even started rolling off the debt. If you look at the Fed balance sheet, it's like barely edging. It's flat. It's barely going down. They haven't done anything yet. And we're having this kind of correction. That's how over leveraged everything is. You got other data coming out. Like I mentioned, the productivity data. Now we have credit usage amongst retail credit usage, which is going off the charts because people are trying to maintain their lifestyle, I guess, through means of credit cards and whatnot. While everything else, all the prices, everything else in general, prices are rising. Gas hit an all-time high price-wise. I know you look at across the pond, we have some more of the Russian oil market fiasco, or nat gas fiasco, but it's all not looking too hot. And like I want to keep harping on, it looks like the housing market is starting to crack in various areas. I start seeing. I went on to bankrate.com and just like hypothetical, see what a mortgage would be from various credit levels. You're at 5.5% roughly. If you're of the 740, if you're in that 680, you're at almost 6% on some of these. Some of these are offering at 6%, and 30 years. I'm talking, not 15. So we're there. You talk about the inverse relationship between interest rates and pretty much home affordability. We're at a level I don't think we've seen. I know they're saying it's since like 2008, but I think this is way worse than that. We get CPI data tomorrow, who knows what that'll do. Either way, if it's a positive number, it's bad. At this point, right? Because everything's compounding upon itself. I just can't. I can't see this being good for the market. You might get a rally here and there, but we're going down. It's on the downside until the Fed reverses trend, and then that's precarious in itself. When they reverse and they come back in with QE, they're on the precipice of completely just destroying the dollar, and that's kind of what I'm calling for the actual collapse. But anyway, I've been playing it on the short side, like I've said. I'm just gonna let you know this. I actually sold against one of those positions just to get make just a little bit of money, but way outside. Like if I actually get called on this, we've had one of those capitulation selling down moves, and then my other stuff I've just held on. I almost took profit the other day. And then I was like, you know what? I put in an order and I didn't get hit, so I'm glad I didn't, because today it really I'm like, well, these levels, when I'm looking at it, I really don't know the levels that much. It's been a while since we've been down here, but I was like, well, okay, there's a period where at about 3,600, or there's a number of levels I don't have off the top of my head, but they're right there. So we got plenty of downward space on the S&P to go down when if we get any more horrific numbers, or when we get that next rate hike, or we start seeing QT. So that, like I always talk, I've been talking about the zombie companies, and we're gonna start seeing that stuff start coming to fruition as these interest rate. One of the other surprises was some of the treasury auctions were not that bad, but I mean, in relative sense. Um, but you have people pouring in a little bit of money into the treasury market, and you've seen the yield kind of go down as though it's some sort of a bastion of safety anymore. But we're still holding around that 3% range. It's going to go up, no doubt. Biden came out yesterday, I believe. I was going to do a video, I got busy, but he in order to fight inflation, he's going to create inflation. He thinks his policies are helping, which is doing the opposite. This is like the kid off Simpsons, like thinking he's helping. I'm helping or whatever it is that kind of off the wall kid there and do the meme about. But if anything, like he wants to pass all these bills, and he's saying that's going to help. Well, my question to him is, one, is it increasing? Well, one, government is super inefficient. I don't think they run anything efficient besides the efficiency of maybe destroying things. And even that, you say, well, the military is efficient at killing things, but look how much you pay for that. So they're not that efficient at killing things. You're paying an exorbitant amount for them to actually destroy things. But the real deal is, the more the government spends, the more it is. It's taking resources from the private sector, which is inherently efficient and more economic. You're now filtering all those resources through bureaucrats and inefficiency and things that hinder private enterprise. What do you say? Something else he said, we're going to raise a corporate tax in order to fight inflation. That doesn't do that. What it does is you're actually making inflation worse, or I would say rising prices worse, because now a company that needs to invest, they don't have the excess profits now to invest in becoming more productive, more efficient, and that is a downward pricing pressure. So even if they wanted to now, because you're taxing them more, they have to then hit the debt market, which every time you take out a loan, in a sense, since there's fractional reserve banking, you are creating money out of nothing, creating credit, which is a form of money. So you're expanding the money supply. Another form of that's inflation, and another pressure to the upside of pricing. But so it doesn't look good. Things don't look good at all. This is not just Biden's problem. This is a problem that's been building over time through monetary insanity. We should get rid of the central bank. We need a free market and money, but we'll never have that. If we look at some of the other things, Pfizer data came out, or more documents. Now, the analysis that I have seen on it, there's a lot of interesting precarious things that are in this data that's presented. One, how they got the volunteers. The amount of volunteers in such a short period of time, if you look at the graphs, it just looks insane. If you've ever seen any studies where they've actually had to recruit people, the fact that they were able to get this amount of people supposedly in this short of time, if you look at the graph, it's just, it raises, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it raises your eyebrows to look into these things a little bit more, and like it pops your spidey senses. That's what I'm saying. Two, we're looking at the antibody responses from a 10 microgram dose, 1 dose, 2 dose, and also a 30 microgram dose, or 1 dose and 2 dose over a span of a month, right? Or after they recorded after the second dose up to a month. And you look at the antibody levels, and one, they just varied from the data sets they had there. They varied so greatly that it didn't give you an opportunity to really make a real solid baseline. In fact, you wonder how this relates to other things that were happening with this, Fauci juice, whatever. But there's a lot of unanswered questions about that. And then two, in this study so far, from what we can tell, they didn't really have a baseline in the amount of antibodies you need to be effective in neutralizing the virus itself. And three, what they've seen in there, if you're just looking at immunity through the lens of antibody production and circulating antibodies, what it was showing is a huge drop off, almost like you would have it every 14 days. So by the time you got to a month out, you were anywhere from 75% to, depending on which age group, to 80% lower. And some people did better than others, but in general, 75 to 80% lower antibody level than the peak after the second dose, which is good. It could, I mean, that's not necessarily bad, but it is weird that there's such varying responses and that there was a huge drop off. Now, the drop off, I don't know why the FDA and these guys didn't ask questions about that. Well, okay, well, the antibody response after 30 days is a 75% lower than the peak response, and we don't know what level is good because apparently they didn't ask that question in the study, which you'd think you'd want to know what the base level is and the amount of circulating antibodies that are effective. Two, it's not necessarily, you don't want circulating antibodies constantly after the disease has been purged, because you think about if all the diseases or viruses or whatever, that you are immune to, if you had the antibodies constantly circulating at certain levels, your blood would be thick like motor oil. So that's why you have T memory cells and all these, stuff like that they allow you lasting immunity, because then they can just go to the B cells and they start, they turn into plasma cells and they start busting out these antibodies when you actually need them. So it's not necessarily, to me, the best way to judge immunity, and I've said that for a long time. But anyway, this data set, you would think the FDA would have a lot of questions, or if anything, they would have came out and presented this data to the public. But I think for some reason they just want people to get jabbed. But instead of being completely honest, like, hey, this is what we're observing, and that after a month or so, the antibodies are leveling off of here or whatever. It didn't even, in the data set we've seen there, it didn't even go 2 months. It was 1 month afterwards. So very interesting that you can get an EUA off of that, and they did it so haphazardly so far. I mean, there's more documents to be released, but those documents are overshadowed by a Supreme Court leak, by various other things. But it's interesting. And all the while, there's been a protein adjuvant vaccine that has been widely accepted across the world that is waiting a hearing. I think they got it on June 7th. But they submitted their data in January, and we're talking about almost 6 months afterwards, and it's taken this amount of time for the FDA to even look or to come up with something. And these guys, they've been all over the place, and their data seems to be pretty on point, especially when I look at it from the adverse side of things. And if I have to get a COVID shot, this is the one I'm getting. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Interesting rest of the week in the markets. We'll see what happens. But buckle up, like I said, because we haven't even got started yet. We haven't got QT, and we haven't even got over 1%. This is going to be a wild ride. So I hope you're invested the right way. I hope you have assets. I know most people I know, or at least my family, besides like one member, don't. They're just kind of riding this tide. But a lot of people are going to be hurt. They're already hurting now. And it's not going to be good. I'm not happy about any of this. This sucks. This could have been prevented years ago if we'd have just taken our pill. If we'd have just done the right thing, but we kept kicking the can. And now we're going to have to pay at least some of that price. Anyway, talk to you later. Peace.